Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We are creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Dr. Valery André, who is a cardio anesthesiologist at Mayo Clinic. Welcome to the show, Dr. Valery.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Paul. It's a pleasure being here.
Pleasure's all ours. We're going to be talking about a lot of things. I'm going to be talking about your story, your journey. I recently was able to look over your bio. There's a lot of great things, your studies, a lot of the places you have studied at. I want to kind of dive right in, but I really want to know, just peel back for me and obviously for the listeners, let us know where you're from and kind of give us a little synopsis on your journey and where you came from to where you are right now.
Very well. So I'm Valery André, born and raised in Haiti. I studied medicine in Haiti from 2000 to 2006, and I practiced in the countryside as part of our social service for a year and stayed in the countryside while I was preparing for my USMLE. I moved to the United States in 2009. I initially went into internal medicine, which was very fulfilling, very happy. And then I switched to anesthesiology after completing my internal medicine residency. Part of it was also motivated by the earthquake in Haiti, which happened while I was still an intern back in January 2010. And I wouldn't say that I felt useless, but I felt that I could do more and provide more and help more by adding, I would say, another path, another career, another specialty to my armament, which is what I did from 2012 to 2015. And after practicing, learning anesthesiology trade, I actually completed a fellowship, a subspecialty, as you would call it, at Mayo Clinic from 2016 to 2017. And I've been practicing here in Minnesota with Mayo since 2017 as an attending, and 2016 if you count my fellowship.
Oh, wow. So coming from Haiti to where you are right now. First off, I want to say you are the first doctor we are interviewing on Zaka. And so it's an honor to hear your story and have the listeners hear about your story. When you were growing up in Haiti, what inspired you to go into the medical field?
Believe it or not, as a child, I wanted to be a pilot, but I think that was when I was 9 years old.
Pilot in the medical field. That's
Yeah. No, but actually, I get it from my mom. I would say both my mom and my other moms, but especially my godmother. My godmother is a pediatrician, and my mom was basically the only medical personnel in our little town of La Vallée in the south of Haiti. She was it. She was the only person, I would say, on call, middle of the night, weekend. Whether it be it a toothache, I remember that child with a burn. As a 4 or 5-year-old, I remember seeing my mom taking care of everyone, whether it's vaccination sites, whether it's that child with a burn that I will never forget, whether it's being called for emergencies or just not being home for a few days because she worked at a hospital. And I spent more time with my grandfather in those days, actually, than I did with my mom. Then growing up with my godmother, who's a pediatrician, I was always part of her clinics and into all of the patient care thing. Around the time I was 16, 17, I actually wanted to be a biomedical engineer. I was very good at math. I was really inclined towards engineering, and I wanted a way to fuse these two passions. And I considered biomedical engineering for a while, but eventually I went to medical school in Haiti, and the rest is history.
Now, you said your mother was that individual that kind of inspired you at first. Do you feel like a
Yes.
lot of those values and morals that you have right now in your field come from your culture, from your mom, from your history, from your background?
Absolutely, absolutely. Just to give you a rough idea, in Haiti, before there were the private institutions, basically from the state university where I went, you went to school first, and then you somewhat paid back to society by fulfilling a year of social service in the countryside as far as possible from the big cities. And when it came time for me to complete my social service back in 2006, there is no way I was going back to my hometown. In my hometown, I don't exist. I don't have a name. In my hometown, I am still my mom's son. I am still the son of Miss Naimi. So just to give you a rough idea of who that person was and that giant, and she is still an idol. She is still a legend in town. And although she passed away in 1988, I have to say to this day, I don't measure to her stature and her accomplishments. Um, Everyone remembers her. She took care of, basically delivered just about every child who's my age or younger than me, till who was born until 1988. Her compassion, the way she treated people, her knowledge, her like she was not even a full-fledged nurse, but the breadth of her practice was such that she was a hero. She was my model, and she definitely is the one that inspires me. And the stories that I hear of her are the ones that shape my practice today, where I treat everyone like you are my mom. I treat everyone like you are my cousin. Every single one of my patients gets the absolute best that I can provide, that I know of, and that you can get from me. And I think a lot of that has to do with both my mom and my godmother.
That's deep. That is deep. That is something that, everyone that I have interviewed has always mentioned about, someone that has inspired them and motivated them, in their career path and still currently motivating them. And for you to speak highly of your mother like that, and to know the amount of work that she has done in your area, your town, and like you said, like you haven't even amount to where the level of where
No.
she was. So and you're doing a lot of great work, amazing work. Now I know in Haiti, you know, obviously the schooling is a lot different than coming out to the U.S. What was the big difference between the schooling that you had in Haiti, to the schooling that you had in the States? Like, what was like one of the biggest challenges that you had to kind of overcome?
Oh, many differences. Language was one, but also the philosophy is actually different. I learned medicine, I would say, with the French philosophy. It is very different. Testing is very different. You have multiple choice questions are not exactly the same. There are very few, like in terms of schooling, since we're discussing schooling. Um, Most of your exams, for example, I remember my microbiology test, you would have three questions. That's it. Discuss the treatment of malaria. That's it. And they would expect a 2-3 page essay from this. Very different from the way we're tested here. The very few teachers, one of my cardiology teachers, for example, he would have multiple choice questions, but the answers were actually multiple, where you would have both A, B, and E would be the right answers. The perspectives, like for example, I still talk about end of life issues. They are very different in how we approach them. Patients' rights, I wouldn't say that patients don't have a right, but I would say, for example, I've seen the especially when there are discordance between family members, for example, it's approached differently in a French-based system compared to what I've learned in the US. So not only I didn't have to learn anatomy and physiology all over again, but it was how to approach patients. How the medical legal aspect was also
Mhm.
very, very, very different. So I
True.
had to relearn all of this. Those were the main issues. It was more systems based than actual medicine itself. Medicine was the same, but the systems were different.
Mhm. And what about the institutions? Like, how do you feel the institutions? Because that's always a big thing. When immigrants come from different countries. One of the things that they speak on is this, the difference and how they had to kind of, figure their way through the system. Like how was that institution? I mean, you went to Tufts at one point. Like, what was the difference you could say between the institution of like Tufts and like obviously going to school in Haiti? Like, how was that?
I can't call any of them better or worse. What I will say was they were very different. Different in that I will not say that, for example, that my time as Tufts was better in terms of formative years than my time at the State University in Haiti. I will say that they were different. The resources were obviously different, and there was much more was asked of you, say for example in residency in the US, but you also had more resources available. There was a pathway, there were lists, there were expected accomplishments. You do this, you get that. Here's the question, here are the potential answers. Whereas coming from Haiti, where a lot was left up to you, we talk about it all the time. CPR or just placing an IV, we learned a lot from older residents. It is much more structured here. When I came to the US, it was a lot more structured, which also meant that I couldn't just go in and place an IV for any patient that I wanted in residency in the US. But at the same time, there was a time for me to learn how to place central line. There were videos to watch. There were people assisting me and making sure, precepting me, making sure I did the right thing. Whereas back home in Haiti, if you wanted to place 30 IVs tonight, just go to OB and spend time on the labor ward and have one of the interns, if you knew them, or one of the older residents help you with that. And the floor was all yours. I can't tell which is better. I would say I had exposure and access to a lot wider variety in Haiti, and I had a better structure in the US.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Now, currently at the Mayo Clinic, could you explain to the listeners a little bit more about what does a cardio anesthesiologist do?
So I'm a cardiac anesthesiologist or cardiovascular or cardiothoracic anesthesiologist, which means that after doing my specialty in anesthesiology and learning to take care of patients who go to sleep or don't go to sleep or but undergoing different kind of procedures, because as a general anesthesiologist I can do a spinal for a woman going for a C-section. I can take care of a child getting ear tubes and etc. But specifically, you spend an extra year learning to take care of patients with heart problems, whether they were having a heart attack, they have clogged arteries, and we are doing surgery for this, or changing the valves in their heart, or even some lung issues also, or they are getting heart transplants. So you spend an extra year honing the skills that you already started having in residency. We do some cardiac anesthesia during your residency, your specialty, but you can hone these skills doing a subspecialty. So I provide care for patients who are going through anesthesia for heart surgery, and our goal is essentially always the same. We want to keep them safe, we want to keep them comfortable, and wake them up when it's all done.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Now, being somewhat of I want to classify you, and I don't know if you classify yourself. I know you said that you're trying to you haven't filled those shoes of your mother, but you are somewhat of the cream of the crop when it comes from your country. Making it to the U.S., being successful in the U.S. Going to school in the U.S. and now where you are at the Mayo Clinic. How do you hold on to that? Like, obviously, you have a major voice. Being an immigrant coming from Haiti to where you are right now, like, what are some of the things you could kind of, encourage individuals that are following in that path?
Oh, right. Double-edged question, but seriously, it is very rare. I am the exception. I will say that I'm very, very lucky. It was a lot of hard work, but also very lucky. I often say, like, if I was born three doors down or to the left or to the right, I might not have been here today. There was a part of luck, but a lot of it is hard work. And what I can tell, I like to joke about it, but it is true. If I can do it, you can do it too, or many people can. I'm not saying to be a cardiac anesthesiologist, you can do just about any specialty or, outside of medicine. I think what helped me is, as I said, the structure. There, there was a way to do it. You look up to someone, and I want to be like this person. What did that person do? What sacrifices did he or she make? And where am I? Who can help me? And I think those are the questions that I needed answered. And I remember specifically, we talk about it all the time. I couldn't get out of my house if I didn't call one of my seniors and asking them for advice about the exams, about which books to buy, and so on and so forth. I think guidance, mentorship was essential. I think hard work, of course, every single day, 1 hour a day is better than 3 hours cramming on the weekend, was essential. And what I will say to anyone who wants to do it, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Seek help. Seek help. And believe it or not, sometimes the answers you're looking for are right next door. There's someone right next to you with the
Yes.
answers. They're not necessarily far fetched. They're not necessarily from some world expert. Sometimes there's someone you knew who has a brother in the field, a sister who's done it before, who knows someone. I will say ask questions, try and fail, and don't be afraid to look at the big picture and put in hard work over time. I always like to mention it to people. I had to take the long route. It was longer. So I'm older than most people who are in my classes of residency every time, be it in internal medicine or anesthesiology. I did have a couple who are older than me, but I will say that I took the long route and it paid off. It will
Hmm.
take time, and I always say it. I am not planning on retiring anytime in the next 10, 15 years. I mean, I could, but I am
Now
not.
we need you.
Most, yes. And most of us really have a long time ahead of us. I see a lot of 25-year-olds saying, oh my God, this is going to take another 5 years. Think about it. You're 25. If you're planning on retiring at 65, that's 40 years from now. And I'd rather invest the next 5 or even 10 years so the following 30 can be better. Better for you, better
Mhm.
for your family, better for your community, and the other person who's going to look up to you.
And and I appreciate you saying a lot. That was a lot of key gems that you just dropped right there. I want to let you know that just dropped a lot of key stuff. Now, just from in that conversation right there, what you just mentioned, one thing that I know that we are emphasizing here, Zaka, is having a platform like this. Where people could utilize this platform to really hear more about these stories. You know, if you back then, if Zaka existed at that point in time, like what would it have done for you? Like you said, if you were born, three doors down. Now, what if three doors down was Zaka?
I would have been
How
here sooner. It
how
would have
would
been easier. It
it would
was
have okay.
difficult. I wouldn't say impossible, as you can see, but I will say that there were things I wish I knew when I started internal medicine. Oh, I'm sorry, when I started medical school. I will say that there are things that could have helped when I had a lot of trial and errors and mistakes that I made. I learned from them. They shaped me, but I will say that they weren't exactly necessary, absolutely necessary. Not that they would have been a shortcut in terms of effort, but in terms of time and efficiency. So,
Mhm.
what would Zaka have offered me, for example, from the get go? I would have identified the weaknesses in the system in which I was brought up and in which I was learning medicine in Haiti. I would have identified the weaknesses and filled them sooner. I would have known the resources available simply if I wanted to be a great physician, not just because I wanted to migrate to the US or to Canada and so on and so forth. Um, the goal is to help people understand. And when I really go back and think about it, there are some very coincidental events that actually
Mhm.
helped shape me. I had a friend who was just getting rid of an MP3 player, and I had another friend who simply was, well, my cousin actually, not my friend, who was in the habit of recording classes with a videotape recorder and then listening to them later. Those are the little things that actually made a huge difference in my formative years. Boring little things, and I think these are the issues. Like if we can tell our stories and the things that shaped us, someone else can actually accomplish the same without going through the exact same time. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's what I would say. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are many hurdles that we have crossed that the next generation should be able to step on our shoulders and go further and higher than we have.
That is true. That is true, especially if we lived it already. And that's one of the
Absolutely.
keys, always giving back and providing that opportunity for our youth to then say, you know what, it's still going to take you time. You still got to invest. You said it.
Absolutely.
Invest in 5 years to have the next 50 years of your life at that level where you want to be at. Is there something that you could see that you would expect from Zaka? If you had it, like if there's something that you would want us to kind of, develop, for individuals like yourself back then to where you are now, is there something you could see in our platform that you would want?
Well, I grew up when we're still using dial-up internet. So that's when I did my medical school. So things are very different. I will say that this is a huge leap forward in terms of content, access, And I won't say that I probably wouldn't be a physician today, but maybe I would have pursued my dream of being a biomedical engineer, because I actually stopped because I had no idea who, what, when, where. Although I was accepted at a couple of programs in the US, but for example, financial aid would have been an issue. So it's very important to learn, to know what's available. Sometimes you do have a dream, sometimes you have the knowledge, or sometimes you have the talent, but such is life. We don't necessarily have the means. And I will say that a platform like Zaka would provide not only the stories, the success stories, but also the pitfalls. So we
Yeah.
can see how these hurdles were overcome and how it's led eventually to success. So you can immediately go towards success rather than going through the same hurdles and sometimes fail when we could have succeeded. That's
Mhm.
what I would expect from a platform like Zaka, where I can share my story. Everyone, anyone, he, she, older, younger, can share their stories and create basically a building block for the next generation.
Very deep. Now, you mentioned the keyword hurdles, which we all know as we're climbing up that ladder, there's going to be so many hurdles. Could you kind of like break down to us like a hurdle that you had in Haiti while you were studying, and how did you overcome that hurdle?
Oh, many hurdles. One of them I will say was a lot of political issues. We had a lot of breaks, a lot of um, interruptions to our school, and all this time. I remember back in 2004, from December to 2003 to March 2004, we actually had no classes. The school year was interrupted, and I had a few MP3s that I was listening to from the Kaplan medical courses, USMLE preps, a few books here and there. And my uncle, every time he would come to Haiti, or anyone I knew who would come from Florida, I remember using one of eBay's subsidiaries selling used books. And then we would purchase books in English, which are far cheaper than books in French, even though we were studying. Schooling was in French in Haiti for me, but it's medicine. Pneumonia and pneumonia are essentially the same. So at least I could study that. Find books from the previous edition that were 90% cheaper than before. So that was one of the hurdles. Finances were a big issue. Everything medical is expensive. Even if you're in Haiti, everything was expensive. So I will say that having access to some of these, having people who could transport, who could bring books or and CDs and DVDs, all of those helped. And these are just some of the many hurdles. We had a lot of political issues, even as I became an intern, with frequent interruptions here and there. And I think having digital access, like we're doing with Zaka, to information has helped me tremendously
Mhm.
in continuing to learn, study, practice, even though I was at home, for example, and I could still progress.
Okay. Now, having a platform like Zaka obviously could truly help a lot of individuals. Like you said, the success stories, the hurdles, the obstacles, hearing someone's story and knowing that you said back in Haiti at that time you were doing dial-up. So I could imagine the amount of connection issues that might have occurred during that time, especially like during a storm or something along those lines. It's so to see you kind of push through and go through those obstacles and those challenges and not find an excuse in any of that and still pursue your career, right? And that just goes to show the character of the individual that you are. And that's something that a lot of, the listeners are going to take away from these Zaka stories is the fact of everyone pushed through. Everyone found a way to make it happen. There was no excuse. There was no sitting down. There was no, let me sit here and just complain about what's in front of me versus let me just build what could be in front of me. Now, when we talk about immigrants, we talk about minorities, like, could you explain to me, like, what is your perception on immigrants and minorities in the medical field? I know obviously you're in the US now, you know, it's 2021. Obviously, we've been dealing with a large pandemic that just hit our whole world and obviously impacted our country deeply. What could you speak on or say about the immigrant population and minorities in the medical field?
It's there's a lot to say about it. What I can say briefly is that we are here. We do exist. It's not impossible to get here. It's there are far more hurdles than to a native U.S. citizen, I would say, compared to us coming from abroad. That's for sure. But we can achieve just about anything anyone else achieves. There's no question about it. Sometimes, you do have that, I wouldn't call it guilt, but you know that you are away from home and they also need you back home. But at the same time, I don't know of any cardiac anesthesia training program. We don't really do cardiac surgeries outside of a few Americans who come in for missions in Haiti. So I also would not have reached my full potential had I stayed home. Am I more useful actually now with the knowledge that I have and that I share going back home? Probably. And I also try to tell people that to help back home, don't be guilty because you left. I know we talk about the brain drain, but accomplish first, like achieve the best you can for yourself first, and then you can provide it. You can't share if you're running an empty. So accumulate knowledge, relationships, contacts first. That's one. Now, as an immigrant, things are always going to be different. You're always going to face distance from home, from your culture, from your weather. I came from Haiti and I live in Minnesota. You're
Mm.
always going to face these issues, and the system isn't necessarily built for you. I specifically remember when I moved to Connecticut, I residency started July 1st, and I didn't get my social security card until August 25th. Believe it or not, I could not open a bank account. I was still getting a regular check that I would try to go and cash, because I didn't have a bank account because they wouldn't open one for me in Connecticut. In Florida, they would. And I had a very used car that I purchased from a friend. And I couldn't register the car in Connecticut. They are not used to the idea of getting of giving someone or registering a car to someone who doesn't have a social security number. It was unheard of. So I actually had to fly to Florida, get a license plate in Florida, and come back to Connecticut until I got my card. Just to say that the system, from little things from banking to the DMV, is not always immigrant friendly, but it's been done. We've had predecessors. We've had people who've paved the way. And I will say we're necessary. We're absolutely necessary. There are not enough US citizen born and raised physicians, nurses, respiratory therapists. No, there's a lot of help needed, especially now in these times of COVID. We're facing critical shortages of a lot of people in different fields, not just in medicine. So we are needed. We are welcome. Some places we aren't, but you know what? You will find a place that wants, needs, and offers you great opportunities. Um, we are making great strides. We are becoming heads of departments, program directors. So we are here and we're providing great care and also mentorship to anyone who wants to come here.
And you're leading that. You're leading that. So you're definitely doing a lot, and obviously, like you had mentioned before, filling the shoes of not be feeling like you filled in the shoes of your mom, but doing that and being a leader today. Now, I know that you have traveled the world, right? You have visited so many different countries, whether it be for your practice and studying, or just for your leisure. Like, what is one of the coolest places you visited, and why?
Ooh, best surprise of all my travels: Cape Town, South Africa, or South
Okay.
Africa as a whole.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely love that place. I can't wait to go back and over and over and over again. New Zealand is also a fantastic place. I think Egypt is another place that I'll never forget. I think my entire safari through Africa was fantastic. I made some great friends, and I still meet with them annually until 2020, of course.
Hmm.
Um, there are so many wonderful places like Peru that I need to go to. I can't help but go back to Colombia every now and then, or Cuba. There's just so much. It's such a rich culture, so much to explore. I am a scuba diver, as you can tell by my background, and most of the tropics. I just love diving in Turks and Caicos or anywhere in the Caribbean, really. Australia was fun. Probably the place where I've spent the most time outside of Haiti and the USA is actually Australia. No, I visited some pretty cool places, places that are memorable, and I think there are plenty more to go.
Oh, wow, wow, wow. Well, you hit on a couple of places I definitely need to go visit. I need to definitely head out to Australia, the land down under. So I'm hoping I could obviously visit a place like that. Now, you have accomplished so much in your life, so much, like from the traveling to where you are, coming from Haiti to the medical field to studying. How do you feel waking up every day knowing that you have accomplished so much and you have inspired so many other people? And the words that you're saying today with us on this platform are going to inspire so many more. Like, how do you feel?
It feels great. I have to say that every morning when I wake up, I think more about later today than I do about yesterday. It feels great, and I was telling my friends the other day, I can't retire now. They were saying that you need me. No, but I need this. I take a lot of pride and passion in my craft, and during COVID, I realized that I love this. I don't do it for the money. I absolutely don't do it to pay bills. I do it for myself. And it just so happens that patients benefit from it. But seriously, I absolutely love what I do. I am not a person to say, oh, it's Monday. I don't think I've ever said, yay, TGIF. It's like every single day I wake
Mhm.
up. So I know what cases I'm doing tomorrow, at least the scheduled ones, unless there's an emergency. So I'm already thinking about how am I going to make this person's day a fantastic day.
Mhm.
As an anesthesiologist, as a side note, I will tell you that I introduce myself to my patients as Val the bartender, or I ask them, where are you going on your vacation today? Every single patient, every single day, I try to make them feel comfortable, feel good, and I think that's what
Yeah.
keeps me going. Every single day, if anything, I try to have fun with it.
Mhm.
um, and I don't dwell so much on my accomplishments. I look forward to making the next person happy, keep them safe, keep them comfortable, as I like to tell them, and I get a lot of pride in this. Or the
Mhm.
next person who calls me. I just started talking again to someone, a much younger resident who I haven't spoken to since 2016, and just started chatting with her yesterday again. It was good, to get to know where she is and what she's accomplishing, what hurdles she's facing, and how can we help and where we're going. So I think these are the things that I look forward to.
Well, amazing, amazing, amazing journey, amazing story. I do have one question before we conclude on our interview today. I just want to know. I know obviously there's a lot of research, a lot of studying going on. Is there something currently that you're paying close attention to within the medical field right now? I know obviously the pandemic is something. So,
Yes.
is there anything new on the horizon that I mean, if you could share it, I don't know if you can. You're the
I
medical.
am I am director of perioperative medicine at our site, and if anything, I have two major projects. I would say one is mortality. I am a co-chair of mortality, but I'm also in charge of perioperative glycemic control, blood sugar control for diabetics. Sort of a way to tie my anesthesiology and internal medicine backgrounds together and try to control patients' blood sugars around surgeries to reduce their complication rates. So I work with both my internal medicine colleagues and my anesthesiology colleagues, and working on those and trying to improve these numbers and try to have better outcomes and improve the numbers that we have at our different sites throughout the entire Mayo Clinic enterprise. So this is probably what is taking most of my time. I think I spend more time looking at blood sugars now than I do putting patients to sleep.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Valerie, thank you so much for joining us today and obviously sharing your story, your passion, your knowledge, and your gems today with our listeners. I know that obviously everyone listening right now is definitely walking away with a lot of great information.
I hope
And
so.
like you said, ups and downs are very important. You know, um, I really just want to kind of just, emphasize to you that your story is definitely very impacting. And I greatly appreciate, having this opportunity to interview you. And I'm looking forward to having you back on the show and we could talk a little bit more about your journey and some of the new things that you have coming up.
I thank you, Paul. I thank Zaka for the opportunity to share my story, share my journey, and hopefully emulate anyone who wants to follow this path, not necessarily in anesthesia, actually, not even in medicine. Anything you want, any questions I can answer, anytime I can participate and contribute to the Zaka story and the platform and anything we have to offer, it's an absolute pleasure. And it was great being here this afternoon.
If you want to hear about more inspirational stories like Dr. Valery André, please check us out on ZakaConnect.com. Follow us on social at Zaka Connect and follow our feed, Zaka, wherever you listen to your podcasts.